Hello, and welcome to the Bullcast Podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me is Court Winsett.
Hello.
And Cameron Spann will be joining us at some mysterious moment throughout this episode.
Indeed, we're going to keep you on your toes.
So it's Turkey Month. It's coming up. If you haven't thought about it, you may need to go ahead and check in with who's hosting. Do you need to be doing anything? Do you need to bring anything? What's going on? This is not a gift-giving holiday, but it is a food-giving. So think about that.
I am very bad about if I'm having stress in my life, I tend to stress shop.
Oh.
Are you familiar with that phenomenon?
Yes.
Yeah.
A little bit. I know a little bit about stress shopping.
So the other night I was stress shopping and I bought a shirt that when I got notification the next day that it had shipped, I looked at it and was like, what was I thinking?
Did you buy it for yourself?
I bought it for myself. I bought it to wear on Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, fun.
It is a turkey shirt.
Look at you. I want to see this turkey shirt.
Yeah, well, I'll show it to you. Sure.
Okay, so we've got an episode. It's not fun, but it's part of a reality of your financial future. And it may happen to you. It may happen to your significant other. It may happen to somebody you know. But this is something that is not fun to talk about, but we're here to deliver news, good, bad, and ugly. So this is how to bounce back financially after a job loss.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that is anybody who's working for a living, there's always in the back of your head, the fear of losing your job is obviously a sort of a nightmare scenario, but it happens. It happens
does.
All the time.
Unfortunately, FedEx recently just announced another batch of layoffs.
Yeah.
And, that's a big thing that's going on with them. It's been going on for a while. The company got really bloated. And so they've been doing these phase layoff, which makes it hard if you're working there because you're kind of, am I next on the chopping block? What's going on? And it's multiple companies. It's not just FedEx. There's a lot of companies where a lot of times they have to reorg and lots of conversation behind closed doors that you may not know about. And so it may seem like an absolute shock, or you may have some warning. But regardless if you have warning or if it's a shock, it still stinks. And you kind of have to digest what just happened. What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. And so this episode, we're going to kind of talk about some talking points and some different action steps that you can take if that does happen to you.
Yeah.
But before, we're going to go ahead and start our list. And this is movies about job loss.
Yes, absolutely. And one of my favorite movies about job loss or just in general is the first one on the list. So if you don't mind, I'll take it.
Take it.
Up in the Air. This is a movie that starred George Clooney and Anna Kendrick. That was left off of our little,
can't forget her
outline here. She was actually nominated for an Oscar for this movie. I can't remember if she won or not. But anyway, great movie. It's a dramedy, if you will, about a corporate downsizer. George Clooney plays a professional firing person. He goes around, he flies all over the country, going into businesses and helping them do mass layoffs. And
so is he like Richard Gere and Pretty Woman?
Not the same thing. He doesn't buy the companies and then
break them up,
sell them for their parts like Richard Gere did. He more is just, it's a service that the company that he works for provides to other companies. Basically, come in and provide employees with the bad news that they're being laid off. And here,
so those are the people when they walk into the conference room, you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
If you start seeing unfamiliar faces, it's like, who are these guys? Are we getting audited? What's going on?
Exactly. Really, the relationship between him and Anna Kendrick is great. She gives a great performance. Then there's also obviously a whole lot about him as a person, how he handles the job that he has to do. It's a good movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it.
Yeah, I need to see it. Okay, this next one I have not seen either. The Company Men. This film follows three corporate executives, Ben Affleck, Tommy Lee Jones, and Chris Cooper, who face layoffs and try and rebuild their lives. It shows the strain of a job loss can put on your identity, your family, and your friendships.
That's interesting. I have never heard of this movie.
I haven't either, and those are
powerhouse actors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Ben Affleck has been in there was a movie recently where he was kind of struggling with alcohol and things like that, and then he kind of got his life back when he became the basketball coach.
Right. I remember that movie. I don't remember this one.
Yeah. But I mean, clearly identity, family, and friendships, because so many of our lives are tied up into our job. And so we see this when people are retiring, they kind of lose their identity. But it's the same thing as if you are known for working at XYZ company, then it's going to affect so much of who are you anymore and what are you going to do? And especially if you're getting hit by some of these layoffs later in life, it's like, do I have to start all over again? What's going on?
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is another super intense movie. It's Falling Down, starring Michael Douglas. He is laid off from his job. He is stuck in traffic in LA and he flips out and gets out of his car and leaves it in the middle of a traffic jam on the interstate and like basically does some really bad stuff. It really is.
So not what not to do if you lost your job.
It definitely delves into the darker psychological effects of a job loss and the feelings of helplessness that it can provoke. I mean, it's a hard watch.
There's lots of ones like that, like Don't Touch That Swing Line Stapler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, one of my favorite movies, Jerry Maguire. When a sports agent, this is Tom Cruise, obviously. Great movie, often quoted a ton with Show Me the Money and You Had Me at Hello and just all the things. But
You complete me.
You complete me. He feels like he is on top of the world, sports agent. He is just killing it. There's obviously a coup to try and get him out. He has this epiphany and like puts himself out there. Then all of a sudden he's now Mr. Top Shot guy. It's constantly like beat down, like loses the girlfriend, loses like everything, loses his identity, but then tries to rebuild and create his agency. And so it really tests him personally. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
I love it.
It is a great movie. And I kind of get almost the sense that it's sort of fallen out of favor. Like when I saw it in the theater, I loved it. And I loved it for a long time. I don't know if it's because people hit those lines so much. People have kind of gotten tired of it or what. But anyway, I still love it. I watch it anytime.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'll watch it anytime it's on.
Yeah. Okay. And last.
Oh, gosh.
Last on the list is The Full Monty. In this British comedy, a group of laid-off steelworkers decide to form a male striptease act to make ends meet. It's lighthearted, but deals with the pride and vulnerability that job loss can create.
Okay, if you get fired, Court, are you going to become a male striptease? Go work at Chippendale somewhere?
No, just no. Not even, no.
Just no. Okay, so that is our funny little list about job loss. Obviously, there's been tons of sitcoms, tons of movies that touch on this. I know we've talked about them in different times where companies have had like Enron situations, or there's movies about how a company has faulted on their pension plans and then retirees are trying to deal with this. So much of what we talk about in finances is emotional. It hits so many different aspects that people don't realize how much finances impact your weight, your health, your family, your relationships, your attitude. I mean, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of go through some talking points. Being laid off from your job is one of those shocking surprises that can knock you off your balance.
Yeah, I mean, I have found myself in many of my jobs over the years in positions that required me to let people go and or to fire them. So being laid off is not... It can be a very upsetting event, but one thing that you might keep in mind is that if you are a full employee of a company that lays you off, then you will be eligible for unemployment.
Yeah, because there's different, you can quit a job, which is one aspect. You can lose a job through layoff, or you can be fired.
Right. And I will say, whether you're laying somebody off or firing someone, a lot of times the emotional reaction can be the same. And a lot of times it'll start with shock, disbelief, sort of arguing.
All the emotions, anger,
denial. I mean, really, you go through the whole emotional roller coaster, and then eventually, hopefully, you get to acceptance. It's just, especially if somebody doesn't see it coming, if you haven't been as a company making noise about the fact that layoffs are coming, or if you haven't been making noise about the fact that a particular person needs to be fired because they're
not performing as well, things like that.
They think everything is going okay, and then you just come into the room and say, sorry, we're going to have to let you go. Obviously, the first thing on that person's mind is going to be like, what the heck? What happened here?
Well, and it's kind of last week's episode, we were talking about asking for a raise, asking for a promotion, things like that. And so it's part of what we talked about in that episode was having those conversations with your managers, with your boss to kind of see how they see you're doing. Because those meetings, while you may walk away and not have the raise, you may get some insight of maybe you're not performing as well. Maybe you're kind of getting close to the chopping block.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, it can be a major wake-up call if it's a performance-related termination, but it is what it is. You know, if the company can't afford to keep all of its employees and it has to let people go to cut costs, then it has to. You can't fight that.
Court, have you ever been laid off or fired from a job?
I have never been laid off, nor have I ever been fired from a job. No.
I did have, and I talked about this openly, I did have a job where because of a conversation I had with managers and things like that, I chose to walk away from the company because I felt like it was not benefiting me. So that was a job loss, but it was one that I chose to do.
Yeah. I have one time in my life chosen to walk away away from a job because I wanted to change careers. And so I left working one job, went to law school for a few years. My wife at the time, if y'all haven't heard this story before, let me tell you, she was an absolute champion. She had been working as a stay-at-home mom, taking care of our 3 kids. I told her I wanted to go to law school, so she went back out into the workforce and supported us for 3 years while I was going to law school. She's an amazing woman.
This is why Robin and Beth Pickler are saints, because Beth did this pretty much same as, she was trying to make sure she was keeping the home front down and taking care of the babies while doing law school. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah. I can tell you that even having chosen to step away from income and go back to school, idea of doing that was so terrifying to me. And that was something that I chose to do. I intentionally did that. I stepped away. I said, I'm not going to take this income anymore. I'm going to move over here. I was terrified about it for several years. I cannot imagine what it would be like to just all of a sudden be told you're out of a job, you no longer have this income, and you had no say in the matter. That would be a scary situation to be in. But there are ways to get back on your feet.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, that's because initially, as we've already talked about, like, it's where's the money going to come from? How are you going to pay for bills? What are you going to take care of? And let's face it, there is never a good time to be fired.
Right.
Or lose a job. Like, it's never going to be a good time. It's going to hit at the holidays or when you just had a kid or when your wife just lost their job or something like that. It's going to hit. And that is where I'm having a conversation with somebody today who is scared that they're on the chopping block. And so we're prematurely having a conversation on what could happen. What do we need to prepare? They at least are eased in the fact that if they do lose their job, we have a plan.
Right.
Now, you don't always have that ahead notice, but have a partner. And, if you've got a financial advisor, you've got a financial partner that you can work with, talk to them. They can help you through it.
Yeah. One of the things that we do have to say up front, and I don't want this to come across sounding like we're gloating here, like we told you so, but obviously one of the things that you should keep in mind is that if you have followed any of our advice and you've saved up that 3 months worth of your expenses and have that in savings available, then you might be okay. You'll have time to find another job. Having that emergency fund can be so important because things do happen. Life changes. If you're prepared for it, you will be okay. You just need to get your resume updated and start looking for another job, but you've got that fund there sitting there to help you through the time while you don't have the income.
Yeah. Okay. So figuring out your finances, this will help you determine how you can sustain a job search before you need additional income. Obviously, it's take a second to process. This just happened to you. What's going on? Address the fact of, were you given some kind of severance package? Here's some things to think about. Healthcare. How long is that going to last? Kind of give yourself a goal because you just lost the job, but now your job has changed to finding a new job.
Yeah. You've got to treat it like a job.
Yeah.
I mean,
you've got to assess the situation. Healthcare. How do we handle that? Income. What's our savings? Just really kind of reallocate everything and see how long do I have before I have to get a job. Now, this is not the glamorous aspect of it, but it's one of those that, well, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now. Sometimes you have to get a job that you don't necessarily want in order to take care of your family.
I agree, yes.
So, and we've heard oftentimes people talk about like Walmart, or I'll go, say, do you want fries with that? I will do something to make sure I'm providing for my family while I'm looking for the next thing. Because I will tell you, as people who look at resumes, if I saw a situation where someone worked at a company and then had a large gap in between with nothing, then it'd be like, okay, what happened here? But if I saw worked for a Fortune 500 company and then worked at Barnes & Noble or something like that, I'd know there was something going on there.
Yeah.
They just got a job to make sure they still had income coming in.
Right. When I look at somebody's resume, I'm going to look at the start date and end date of each of their jobs on their resume. I'm looking for a couple of different things. Are you currently employed? If so, why are you looking to leave your job?
Yeah.
Obviously. But also, how long have you been with that employer? If you have several jobs on your resume, how long were you with each employer? If you spent a short period of time with every single employer on your list, then I'm going to want to know why that is. I've had people say, I lost this job, which I was at for 4 or 5 years, and I got laid off. So I took several jobs to make ends meet in between. And then, now I'm interviewing with you, something like that.
Because and I always thought this was cliche, but it's so true. It's easier to get a job when you have a job, because then it's not as much pressure. It's not as desperate. It is, if we're talking about a quick turnaround, you got laid off and then, within a month or so, you're able to then immediately pick up and go somewhere else. It's okay to have those in between jobs just to make ends meet and, get a health insurance or things like that. Unemployment benefits. That is something that you can apply for. There's obviously certain parameters that go with that. It's not an easy process. It takes some time, but if that's something that needs to happen, you need to have that on the top of your to-do list.
Yeah. And again, if you were laid off, then that is an option for you. It is not a standardized process across every state. Every state does it differently. So it depends on where you live, but every state does have some form of unemployment.
Yeah.
So.
And unemployment runs out. Do not look at it as it's just kind of like the COVID money that we had. Like it will run out. And so that is just a Band-Aid to help ends meet. And it is not meaning that you can, wallow in your sorrow of, hey, I don't have this job anymore. Like you still have to try and get back on the horse. Unless you don't need the money, then obviously do what you need to do. Severance. Court, you want to talk about severance packages? You've had a little more interaction than I have with these.
Well, I mean, it's not something that a company, at least here in Tennessee, it's not something that a company is required to pay you unless you have a contract with a company that says that you will be given a severance or, that a particular term to it that if they fire you early, they have to pay you out or something like that. If you're just an at-will employee, then it's not something that they're required to give you, but many companies do pay severance packages to employees, either layoffs or terminations.
Yeah, it's all depends.
Yeah, but a lot of times I would say I've seen everything from a month's salary to 3 months' salary. And sometimes, they'll pick up extra expenses. If you say like, well, I had to pay to move here and now you've let me go. What am I supposed to do? I'm going to have to go back home.
Yeah.
How am I going to pay for that? They may pay, help defray your moving expenses.
And that's where, obviously if you're in this situation, your head's not thinking, oh, well, I need to negotiate here, but it's like you can still bring up some of that stuff if you think about it
100%.
and talk about it at least.
Yeah. A severance package is almost always, or maybe even always, certainly I would never offer anybody a severance package without there being a severance agreement or a separation agreement.
Yeah.
And that separation agreement is going to be something that you don't just want to sign. You're going to want to review that, maybe have a lawyer look over it because they're usually...
Call your partner.
Yeah, they are usually going to have you waiving a whole lot of
stuff.
Yeah.
And you need to look at it because there could be documentation in there on what your future jobs could be, like non-competes, different industries you can go into. The other thing that kind of falls in the realm of severance packages that a lot of people are seeing right now is buyouts, early opportunities. And these are people that are kind of close to retirement age or getting closer to it where companies are wanting to trim that top.
Yeah.
And so...
We've seen it happen again at FedEx. You brought that up earlier.
Yeah, it's happening a lot at FedEx right now where people are offering them opportunities to leave early. If you were listening to this is kind of more of a negotiation aspect. They're saying, hey, we're offering you this. Some people are given the option. Some people are like, this is what's happening. But if you were given the option, again, have a quick conversation with somebody, run the numbers and see, because sometimes it's not in your best interest. Sometimes it's better to hang on. But a lot of times people get stuck with that glimmer of, oh my gosh, they're going to give me $50,000, $100,000 to walk away. But you need to think about it. Are you in a financial position to retire? Or were you going to work a couple more years? Does that $50,000 really justify the working years, the retirement account years, things like that?
If you're close to retirement age, it's something that is illegal, but it also is something that everybody obviously worries about. If you're close to retirement age and you get laid off or you choose to take a package to retire early, can you retire or are you going to have to find another job? And what the dirty thing that I was going to say is employers look at the age and say, how long am I going to have you? If I invest in your training and in everything that goes along with hiring a new hire, am I going to see payoff from that? Or are you going to just retire in a few years,
Yeah, I mean,
technically we can't, an employer cannot discriminate based on age, but
employers, let's face it, there are definitely some employers that are looking at how much these employees are costing them. Companies that still have pensions around are thinking about how much those pensions are costing them, health insurance, how much, they're having to flood into that, things like that. It does happen. And again, that you may be in a circumstance where you may or may not have some legal standing. And so that's, again, if you're hearing this, it's kind of go ahead and have your team set up, have your financial, your accountant, your legal, have your power team. If these situations happen, you can call them. And I joke and tell a lot of my clients all the time, I'm kind of like your financial guardian angel. You don't need me every day, but you never know when you may have to call on me. Usually is in situations like this where it's kind of oh my gosh, this just happened. I need to have some some background of you and have known you for a while to be able to give the best recommendation, the best suggestions to you. It can't just be like, hi, my name's Court. Here's my story. This just happened. What do I do? And I'm like,
help, please.
I mean, we can help in those situations. It just takes longer versus hey, I told you I thought I was going to get fired and I got fired. What do we do next?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I just briefly in passing that I think is important to cover, and it's not on our list, so let me just throw it in here right now. When you're looking for a job from the perspective of somebody who hires people, the resume is very, very important. If it's been a long time since you updated your resume, there are professionals out there that can help you write your resume, draft your resume. People have different opinions about what should go on a resume. I'm still very much old school. I like it black and white. I don't like a lot of snazzy colors and so forth. But
if you're working in graphic design or social media aspects, it needs to look nice and not just be we're in finance and legal and accounting. So it's kind of basic.
So there are pros that can help you, depending on the industry that you're in, that can guide you in terms of what your resume needs to look like. You can also use AI. AI is actually a really great tool for helping draft a resume now. But get that resume together and then just apply for stuff, man. You gotta put
yourself out there and don't ask for help. Like be okay with asking for help or talking to people or seeing if there's people who can help open doors.
Yeah.
Other thing, health insurance. We talked about that. There are things like Cobra.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really expensive in the most cases. There are also, most of the time you hear about health insurance and how there's open enrollment periods where you can make changes. Well, our job loss is a event that would allow you an exception. So if I lost my job, lost my health insurance, then we could then look at my husband's health insurance and see, could I be added on his because I had lost my job? Now, again, this is a time sensitive thing. If I lost my job in August and I'm waiting until January and go, I probably should do something. That may be an issue.
Well, yeah. I mean, life changes. First of all, you said Cobra expensive. The reason Cobra is expensive is because employers do have to offer you the option of continuing your coverage, but they do not have to subsidize your premium anymore. No. And the premium, generally speaking, the unsubsidized premium is higher than the premium that was being paid by you while you were employed.
Yes.
So that's why it goes up, but it may be your only option. It may not be your only option. We do have the Affordable Care Act. You could potentially look into possibly privately insuring yourself. There are new medical practices that are coming up with ways to offer medical services to people basically outside of the current insurance structure. So you might be able to find healthy support for your health without insurance. Basically, you should look into all of your options.
Figure out how long you're going to be covered with your current employer, backdate that, several days prior and say, okay, I've got to make sure I've got a plan put in place prior to this expiring.
Yeah. Interesting thing to me was one of my children just turned 26 and had to get off my insurance. And she lives in a different state. And in that state, they have insurance for low income people. So she was able to get on insurance when she had to fall off of ours. That was such a relief to me because it was something that was keeping me up nights. I was worried about
her entire paycheck having to go towards health insurance.
Yeah. Check with your state. Make sure that the state doesn't offer something. I can tell you Tennessee doesn't. But if you live in a different state, hey.
And that's again where it's having those conversations because a lot of times you're very emotional at this moment and you're thinking, well, I'll just not have health insurance.
Yeah.
That's going to be a whole other issue.
Okay. How are we going to deal with the debt and so forth?
Yeah, because you're probably going to have a situation where you're going to maybe rack up credit cards. You're going to have issues because you're in between jobs. Now, obviously, if you had prepped ahead and you have those emergency funds and you have those savings, then that's where you're able to dip into those because that's what they're for. So yes, you may be depleting those, which means then when you get the job, you've got to rebuild them back up again.
Maybe you go through your budget, eliminate stuff that you don't have to have. If you can do without it, if you got 3 months savings, then you want to figure out how much you can spend each week for 3 months. You basically want to be prepared to live on a fixed income for that 3 months and make sure that you live within your means as much as possible.
Yeah.
So if you have to eliminate stuff, maybe you have to cut out Netflix or something like that.
A lot of times, a lot of those services, may have like a freeze option, things like that, where you can temporarily freeze services. So obviously prioritize your payments. You've got got to pay your utility bill, your house bill, your electric. Find out, if there's ways that you can kind of readjust things. Like if you've got where you were paying extra on something, maybe drop it back down to the minimum, whatever needs to happen. And again, everybody is a different specific situation. So I would say get a partner or really just drill down on your budget, look at everything and address the fact, were you the only income person? What was going on here? Many companies have programs that help you with when you're facing tough times. So it could be a conversation with a credit card company, with a loan company to kind of see what happens. I've heard about it with car notes, mortgages, things like that's obviously more of a last resort. But at the end of the day, you still need to have your house. You need to still have your vehicle to get to and from these interviews. You still need to maintain your lifestyle. Now, does that mean going in, eating out every night, things like that? No, like you can definitely trim your budget.
Yeah.
Looking at different lenders, there's so many different things you can look at. Obviously, try and avoid getting debt if possible. But that's kind of one of those like, okay, Katie, I just lost my job. Like, what do you want me to do?
We should discuss, what do you do if you don't have that savings? What do you do? How are you going to live if you don't have anything prepared? If you didn't get a severance? If your immediate focus needs to be on finding something. Some kind of income. It may not be what you want to do for the rest of your life. It may not be in your area. Find something.
What's your skill sets? What can you provide? I mean, even if it's as not glamorous as like mowing yards, or if you're a talented graphic designer, can you do some freelance stuff? Can you help with tutoring? Like, what are your skill sets that you can provide? Uber Eats, like things like that you can do. Like if you've got a reliable vehicle, can you do this? And again, it's not glamorous. If you're, used to be identified as a manager, a high up in a company, and now you're driving Uber Eats. Well, if anybody tries to pick fun at you, you are taking care of your family. You are doing what needs to be done. That is not embarrassing at all. You are being financially careful and mindful.
Yeah. And just remember, if you have no choice but to live off of a credit card for a period of time, do it for as short a period of time as possible. And remember that even with a credit card, you are going to have to pay something toward that debt every single month. There is a minimum payment that you must make, or you can get in trouble and it can ruin your credit. So,
there's different options where, you can be wise about the credit cards. You can, if you've got a home equity line of credit, you got different things like that. We can really kind of strategize how to get by during this temporary time, but it's really kind of just addressing your situation. Obviously, consider a pivot. You never know what's going to come up. And just because you go and work at, a McDonald's or a Barnes and Nobles or whatever it is, doesn't mean you're giving up on landing that next job. You're just paying the bills.
No, yeah. And listen, some people are worried that if they take one job, they'll be so busy with that job that they won't have time to look for other jobs. Job searching nowadays is way different than it was when I was first out of college. I mean, all the websites, LinkedIn, Indeed, things like that. Maybe former workmates. I got a job, the job that I did in child support when I was working in child support. I got that job because I knew somebody who was working there, and she was like, "We've actually got a position open. Why don't you apply?" And so I applied and got the job. So talk to your friends, talk to your former colleagues, talk to your former schoolmates, like just,
And again, it's like we have to deal with kind of hiring people and bringing people on. If I had somebody's resume that looked really good, but they told me, "Oh, I can't meet with you until after 5:00 because I'm working my job," then we'd understand, because they're having respect for the job they're currently working at. They need this. And so we're not going to discount this person just because they can't take time off of their work to then come and meet with us.
No, I was just recently, actually, and I don't do this often, but just recently I was impressed enough with somebody's resume that I wanted to speak to them, and they couldn't get here during normal business hours, and actually asked if it would be possible for me to meet with them on a Sunday. And I did, because I wanted to talk to them. And, I appreciated their straightforward look. Job that I have now, I can't lose it, and I can't get away during the day. So could we possibly meet some other time? And I was flexible. I did end up hiring that person. So, it works out.
We'll have to find out who that was after this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we teased that Cam was going to join us at some point, but I promise you Cam did not lose his job. He's still here.
He's still here.
He has actually just gotten pulled into working on his fabulous job. Anyways, I know we still need him here, but hopefully this has been an informative episode. Obviously, this is a situation that nobody really wants to talk about, but we made a promise to you guys that we wanted to touch on all different kinds of topics. And so if you walk away from nothing, then my bullseye for this is going to be taking that initial shock that this happened, reevaluate. It's just like if you were to get a new job, bring a child into the world, or graduation, situation or whatever it was, something that has changed in your life, this is a pivotal moment where you need to go back to your plan, readjust, kind of redo everything and see what are your next steps. And it's kind of act quickly. But obviously, here's my call out. If you are in a situation where you feel the rumbling around you, like you may be losing your job, things are not looking as well, or maybe that you're unhappy and you may be changing jobs, go ahead and have that conversation when you have those fears rather than waiting to, hey, it happened.
I don't bullseye often these days, but I have something that I do.
Oh, here we go.
I do want to just say, I recently saw a meme online and I really, really liked it. It all centers around one of my favorite movies, Avengers Endgame. And
so sad.
It's the part of the movie where the bad guy, I won't get too much into characters, the bad guy is really beating up on our heroes. They're basically devastated. It looks like everything is going down the drain. They're going to lose.
Thanos would be the one to fire everybody.
Yeah.
He would be a terrible boss.
And Captain America stands back up, cinches his shield tight on his arm, and is ready to go in and keep fighting, even though it looks like all is lost. It's at that point that he hears a friend of his say, "Cap, are you there? Can you hear me? On your left." It's an ongoing joke. On your left is an ongoing joke throughout the movies that I won't get into explain. But right after he says on your left, all of these people, all of these other heroes that had disappeared from the fight basically for the entire movie show up through portals basically.
Yeah.
And the tide of the battle turns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I just want to tell you, if you are distraught, if you feel like all is lost, if you've lost your job and you don't know what to do, here we are on your left.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, there's the closing bell. Ladies and gentlemen, you have made it to the end of yet another episode of the Bullcast podcast. If you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please feel free to go to your favorite subscription service and sign up to have our podcast delivered directly to your listening device every single Thursday at noon. If you'd like to find out more about Cortland, Katie, Cameron, or Nicole, please feel free to go to our website. That website is bullcastpodcast.com. We've got bios up there, we've got pictures, and we've got a place where you can drop a comment or suggest a topic you'd like to hear us say more about. But I mentioned pictures. If you like pictures, we've also got an Instagram handle. That handle is at Bullcast Podcast. And we have an X handle. That is at Bullcast Podcast as well. Finally, we have a Facebook page, which is Bullcast the Podcast. So check that out. We also, every single show, mention the fact that we work at a place called Pickler Wealth Advisors. And if you would like to find out even more about us, find out about our team, find out about what we do, what we can do for you, and find out about our boss, David Pickler, please feel free to go to that website. That website is picklerwealthadvisors.com.
That's advisors with an O.
Not an E. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully we've given you some good information today. I believe we have given you everything you need to go forth and find a job. So for now, I'm Court.
I'm Katie.
And we're done.